Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Clarks. I'm your co-host, JV Brabham.
And I'm Tyler Duncan.
And today we have another really special guest. He is the Professor of Trumpet at BYU. That's Brigham Young University out in Utah. And we are so honored to have him on our episode today. And I just wanted to introduce the Dr. Jason Bergman. Dr. Bergman, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be with you guys.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yes. So we know you're a busy man these days.
No, there's always time for you guys, for sure.
Oh, thank you. So before we get into our questions for you about your career and your life and your studio, Tyler and I like to start off with a little bit talk about one of the things he and I both enjoy is coffee. So Tyler, what are you drinking today?
All right, so I ran out of filters for my Chemex, so I had to. Right now, I'm doing the V60 pour over.
V60, okay.
Yeah, V60 this week. So we got a bag of beans from Honduras, and in fact, I've never really tried Honduras before, so this is new for me. And some of the it's a light roast. Again, that's kind of my trending is more in the light to medium roast. But yeah, it's good. Flavored oats consists of berry, chocolate, and it says sweet on there, but it's obviously light roast, so it is going to be on the sweeter side. But I like it, and I got my master's mug whenever those events occur again. So
well, I think that's
what about?
Right.
So yeah, they're still doing some of that.
Yeah.
What about you?
So I have a new bag of beans. So I kind of cheated and told Tyler about this other day because I was really excited about it. So I found a new beanery here in town where I live, and there's this guy who has all these beans. He does the roasting himself, and he sells everything wholesale. And it's just one guy in this one shop, and he does his roasting. So I have. He had this freshly roasted when I went. He had roasted it that morning, and it's from Bali, and it's a medium roast. And he said, "Hey, just let me know. I can roast it. I can even deliver it to your place." So, like, I'm really excited about this development in my life. So it's like a pound of beans. It's called a beanery, but it's a pound of beans, and it's like really cheap. It's like $15 for a pound of beans. And so I'm drinking the Bali's medium roast. It's actually really delicious. So I'm like 2 servings into that. So it's been great so far. So I'm really excited about this development. If you know me, I'm always looking for fresh beans. So yeah.
Nice.
So Jason, do you drink any like tea or anything like coffee or?
My main drink is water, but I've got it in my nice BYU glass here.
Hey,
I put lemon in my water.
Nice.
One of the things, sometime when you guys ever get out here to BYU, we'll take you to a place called the Creamery, and the chocolate milk at the Creamery is like prime stuff. So that's an every now and then treat. It's not coffee, but we make our own chocolate milk out here, and it's pretty cool.
Okay, I'm down.
Wow, that's cool.
Chocolate milk.
Yeah, there you go.
Just period. So I'm like a chocolate. So
nice.
I have to be really careful with that. Awesome.
That's awesome. So, Jason, how did you get your start in music? This is kind of like the nuts and bolts, but how did you get your start in music? And then transitioning from high school to college, like what made you decide to want to major in music? Because I think everybody kind of has that moment, whether it's like, oh, well, this is all I know, so let me try to do this. Or was there like a passion that was there from an early start that you're like, yeah, this is kind of the track that I want to go on?
Yeah, when I was young, like before junior high, I had an aunt who was in high school, probably when I was in 4th grade, and she was in the marching band. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and she lived in Dallas and was in this marching band. She played trumpet in the band, and I remember we would go watch the halftime shows, and I remember thinking, that's pretty cool. I think I want to play the trumpet. And we don't have any professional musicians in my family, but my mom and my grandpa had kind of played trumpet, casually in high school and things. And so somebody that was really big for them was Doc Severinsen. And I remember having Doc's records that we would listen to. And I remember hearing his sound and just thinking that was amazing. And every now and then, there'd be a little bit that I could watch on the Tonight Show. and hear Doc play, and that was really amazing. And then about that time that I saw my aunt in marching band, for Christmas, she made a tape of me of Wynton Marsalis, his first CD, his first classical one, the one that
Yeah.
won the Grammy when he played Haydn and Hummel
Yeah.
and Mozart. And I listened to that thing all the time. Especially, I remember the third movement of the Hummel, his recording. Just so impressive. And when you're a little kid, especially, you just think it's amazing. It really is. And so those were kind of some influences that kind of got me thinking about trumpet. And then when it was time to go to sixth grade and start band, I knew I wanted to do band. I had kind of played football. If you know me, I'm a bigger guy, and they like me to be on the offensive line. But playing trumpet didn't hurt the same way.
Yeah.
So now it crushes your soul. But back then, it wasn't so physically tough. But so I joined the band, and right away I had a really good trumpet teacher, and it just kind of some things kind of came natural, and I fell in love with it, and I knew pretty early that this is what I wanted to do. Um, you know, I remember before I even was out of middle school, I knew I wanted to do music. Um, and it's kind of gone through phases. Initially, kind of like most kids, I wanted to be a band director because my band director was such a great, you know, um, leader and example. And then as I got into high school, I started playing in the Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra and having experiences in the Texas All State groups, and kind of saw that I really wanted to perform more. I also, I saw what my high school band directors had to deal with. I didn't love marching band, and somehow I was able to convince my band director to let me be a drum major, so that I didn't have to like so so prideful. I didn't want to blow my chops in marching band. I wanted to save them for excerpts. So, but I didn't want to have to do marching band and deal with attitude issues in high school kids, and I really wanted to play. So then I went to school to do that, and then the longer I did that, the more I realized I really loved teaching, and I wanted to be a college professor. So even though I was having success in professional auditions and kind of that was the road I was going, the longer I did that, the more I thought I really want to make an intentional choice to teach. And that's so somehow through all those different phases I got to here, and I feel so lucky. A lot of times when people say, how are you doing, I usually say something like I'm living the dream, because I feel like it. I feel like I've been really blessed, and I've tried to work as hard as I possibly can, to make sure I'm qualified for whatever things I'm doing. But it's just, I mean, you guys know, you're professional trumpet players and teachers, and like, it's just what a great way to spend your life, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with cleaning
Absolutely.
toilets, but it sure beats cleaning toilets for a living, for me. So
Yeah.
maybe there's somebody out there that has that dream, or want to work their way up the McDonald's corporate ladder, or be a lawyer or something, whatever. But man, playing trumpet, what a great life. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the broad view of how I got where I am.
Awesome. So, what has been your biggest takeaway, either from a teacher or a particular degree from a school that you've taken away? What's been like the most impactful?
Well, I've been very fortunate to have some really great teachers, and all of them have played a really important part. From my very beginning teacher, who was Woody Yenny in Dallas, and then in high school I studied with him, and then also took some lessons with Tom Booth in the Dallas Symphony. And my the youth orchestra that I was in, our conductor was Richard John Giulio, who had been principal trumpet at the Dallas Symphony, and he's the creator of Trum Corps Mutes. And and then I did my undergraduate degree at BYU. My teacher there was David Brown, and when I was in here, I also studied with Newell Daly, who was the first trumpet teacher at BYU, and he studied with Jimmy Stamp, and he was a really good influence on me. And then also Nick Norton, who was principal trumpet of the Utah Symphony, and then Bill Campbell at Michigan, and then I've also studied a little bit with Paul Markello and Phil Smith, and really they all influenced me tremendously. So it's hard to pick one thing, but I will. The one thing that came to my mind when you asked that question was I remember going through college and especially graduate school at the University of Michigan, and I started to realize that music, we talked to how it's a great life and it's a great profession to be in that has its own challenges, But even though you're doing music, music is really a people business. And I think that's what I love about it. If you're a performer, it's so easy to focus on yourself and practicing, but really what you're doing is performing for other people. You're communicating with them through music. And that sounds a little idealistic, but at the ultimate base level of it, that's what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And then as a teacher, it's all about people.
Yeah.
It's about helping your students try to accomplish their goals, and then finding, as you get in touch with younger students that you're trying to recruit to study with you, if they want to come, there's a connection there with people. And then when you're done and you start, having your career, you realize that playing together is just an excuse to be with your friends and to be with other people, right? And if there's people you don't know that you're collaborating with, they quickly become your friends. And so to me, the thing that kind of started to stick out to me the more I started getting into professional music years ago was that music is really a people business. And when you focus on the people, it's easy to be successful and to have these really great experiences kind of no matter who you're with, right? You can have people that you have a lot of differences with, and yet when you're playing together, it just kind of comes together. I know it sounds so cheesy, but that's how you get harmony, right? And so I mean through the since March, when we've had all this trouble and conflict, especially in the United States, I keep thinking to myself, man, people just need to play more duets together. Even if they're not trumpet players, get with somebody and sing a song, and quickly so much of that stuff goes away. You know what I mean? So anyway, to me, music is a people business.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think, I'm always telling my students, like, hey, you need to be like good colleagues. You never know who's going to want to hire you or want to work with you in the future. Like, building those relationships now is key. And as like I've gone through school, I've come across like so many people I went to school with or knew from even like all state band years ago in high school. And now like we're in this working environment. So it's so important, and that's so true that it is a people's business,
Well,
relationships and networking.
yeah, you're so right. Even like the three of us, your teacher, Chris Moore, was a really kind, important mentor for me. I never took trumpet lessons from him, but he kind of was my like one of my he was my teacher, meaning like he helped me learn how to be a good college teacher,
Yeah.
right? And he allowed me to come to Florida State when before you guys were at Florida State, when he had no business, when I had no business giving a class at Florida State, he
Oh, I was
invited
there
me.
for that. That's when I was there for that class. I
Well, I
think
think I was there.
you're
Well,
at
then I came
Southern
back a
Miss.
second time. Oh
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah. You're right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's when I first met
So
you. Yeah.
that's right. So and then that's right. That's when we met, and we're doing this now. So it just kind of keeps going, right? Like on the surface, it's a networking thing, right? But beyond that, it's like I said, it's about people, and you never, like you said, you never know how it's going to turn out. We could have a whole 3 episodes
Yeah.
where I could tell you these crazy stories looking back, and I'm sure you guys could do the same thing, right? But
Oh yeah.
it's yeah, it's a blessing about what we do to have that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So you talked about, you were taking auditions and performing a little bit as well. And so what was your transition like from being a student to being a full-time performer and then full-time professor? You're wearing all the hats. And even now, you're obviously with COVID, performances are happening less, but that's something that you still actively do. I remember this was ITG in Miami. I saw you perform and I was like, oh, so beautiful. Like you're just an amazing player, it's like effortless. And so, what was that transition like? Because that can be hard for some people, especially now in this environment, like students that have just graduated school and are kind of like, were there any things that you faced in that as you transitioned through?
For sure, yeah. And thanks for your kind words. Um, yeah, I the first thing that came to my mind when you guys asked that question was one summer I was a fellow at Music Academy of the West, and that was in the middle 2000s. And that summer I was very lucky to work with Paul Markello and Joe Bergstaller.
Mm.
And then when Joe, was their Canadian brass came, and so Ryan Anthony came as the other trumpet teacher, so got to work with him some, and that started a really close relationship that I've had with Ryan. But I remember that summer, asking Paul Markello in a lesson. I just wanted to know, like, this sounds so obvious, but it wasn't. I think I was overthinking it, but I wanted to know how to play musically. and how to kind of get over the hump. And he said, you need to stop playing like a student. You need to play like a professional. And I hadn't thought about it in that kind of way. And so what that really meant was every time I play, whether I'm in a lesson, in a situation, at that time at Music Academy, I was kind of in a student role, right? But he was saying, even if you're in a student kind of role that you typically would be in, don't play like a student. Listen to how a professional plays, watch how they act and how they do their stuff, and start playing that way. And so kind of from that moment, there was a shift in the way I thought about things. And clearly I still had things to improve on in my playing. We all do. I still do right now. But trying to do it as a professional would clicked in my brain in a different way. And then kind of after that summer, that's when professional things started coming more. That after that summer, I won this job in Santiago, Chile. And that was a really great experience. And that, my first concert there, my trial week, was playing Principal on Mahler 2, which that's my favorite piece out of all music. And so getting to do that in a professional context, that you can't play like a student, right? When you're in a professional orchestra. And then there are just many, many more experiences that come. And then that also happens as a teacher too. I remember my first job was at Southern Miss in Hattiesburg, and I will always be grateful for the 5 years there because it helped me learn how to make that transition. When I got there, I was real, um, I don't want to say ignorant, but I'm sure I was ignorant, but I had all these dreams and idealistic, and I wanted to turn, I had just come from Michigan where I did my doctorate and wanted to turn Southern Miss into the Michigan of like the South. And I learned quickly that it shouldn't be the Michigan of the South. It needs to be a really great Southern Miss of the South, right? Mm-hmm. And whoever my students are, instead of having goals for them, I learned that I needed to talk to them about what their goals were, and I had to see myself as someone that helps them achieve what they want to do, not to have all these Jason Bergman clones. Mm-hmm. And doing that has helped me to. I think my students have been more successful, and they're happier because they're doing what they want to do. But that helped me learn how to kind of start to teach the right way, and that I started learning those lessons right away. So I feel bad for all those first students that I had because I was pushing them so hard, but they helped me too. So we helped each other. But now there's a difference, and I kind of see what being a pro is like as a teacher in the same way, right? Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of explained it what you're looking for, but that's kind of what came to my mind.
Yeah, that's great.
Especially like the idea of playing as a professional and no longer playing as like a student. I'm definitely going to steal that line moving forward. I think because there is some like thing that happens, some like click. You say, all right, you need to play like a professional musician rather than like the student who I'm like, you're expecting me to coach you through this thing, Yep. So yep. I think that's great. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's straight from Paul. Yeah. And I remember we were doing Mahler 5, which as a student you play, if you have a lesson with someone like Paul Markello, you play Mahler 5. And he said, you got to play like a pro. And so I had, played Mahler 5. And he's like, look, this is how a pro would play it. And then he like threw it down. And it was like, okay, yeah, there's like a whole nother level. And so, yeah, but I steal it from him too all the time with my students, right? Especially ones that are kind of like at that, right. They're, you can see when they're ready to make that jump. And sometimes that kind of comment just does it. So after that, it became this like personal goal. Anytime I played for an audition or in a professional setting, or if I was in a master class, after that, I would play. And my goal was always to have them say something that was close to being like, well, that sounds professional, not, you know what I mean? If anybody ever said that I sound like a student, it was like the biggest insult I could ever get. So. Anyway.
Awesome. Well, since you started having some success, have you had any like setbacks in your career along the way that either taught you something at the time or showed benefit down the road?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because of the way the world is now and the prevalence of social media, everybody just puts on their, best clothes and only talks about all their successes. And really, the people that I think are the most successful are the people that have lots of failures. Mm-hmm. And anybody that's successful has failures. And failures are a good thing. They don't feel good in the moment. But if you're humble and willing to learn, they can teach you really good things. You know, there's a couple that kind of come to my mind. I remember before I got my job at Southern Miss, I was applying for every college teaching job that was out there, for jobs that I had no business applying for. And I kept every single application. And I have like this file, it's still in my Dropbox, that's got every single, like, you know, CV and cover letter I wrote for every job.
Me too.
And you know, I was lucky because I was able to get that job before I even finished my doctorate, right? It was in my last year. But then I didn't apply for jobs again. But then every job that I've applied for since, I won, and that was interesting. And I go back to those other materials and I look at those and kind of see what I lacked, you know.
Hmm.
And I've also shared that with, you know, with previous, you know, doctoral students I had. I want them to see the resumes that didn't work or the recordings that didn't work, and see my failures too.
Hmm.
You know, I think that's an important thing to talk about. I remember once an audition I took with the Colorado Symphony. It's the one when Justin won the principal job there. The first round was like the perfect first round you could ask for. It was like Leonore 3, pictures, Mahler 5, Petrushka, like all these standard excerpts, and I was so prepared on those and was great. So I got fortunate and I advanced to the next round. And then the semifinal round was the next day. And it was the complete opposite. It was like the hardest thing you could do. I mean, let's see, they started with, like, it was the B minor mass on piccolo. From that, you went like straight to Carmen, and then after Carmen, American in Paris, and then it went to the post horn solo, and it was like the most extreme, like, you know, acrobatic, you know, high cardio workout that you could do on the trumpet that was so unrealistic, and it kicked my trash. I mean, I remember finishing that. I was so excited about the first round, right? And I just remember thinking, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And I was exposed because I would practice all the excerpts that I sounded good on, but then I didn't practice enough the things that I had issues with, you know? So like Carmen was always a struggle, like playing in tune down on the low B flat trumpet, but I had never done it after playing the B minor mass, right? Like when you're at the opposite end on a small horn and way up high, you know, and then playing, you know, post horn solo after American in Paris, right? And so I learned that I wanted to try to hide stuff. I remember going into it thinking, well, there's a couple excerpts and I hope they don't call them. Well, I learned after that one that you just prepare all the stuff that's the hardest, and you turn your weaknesses into strengths by like focusing on them. And that's what a pro does, right? A pro that's humble is going to practice the things that they're not good at, as opposed to things that they sound good at.
Yeah.
So I remember that was a setback that in the moment just I felt so bad, but it taught me some really important lessons that have helped me to today. You know, no matter what performance I'm getting ready for, I make sure to start with the stuff that I can't do well. You know, give myself the most time on it and be honest about where I'm at. So
Yeah.
those are two small ones, but I guarantee you, for all the successes I've had, I certainly have had setbacks.
Yeah, that is so true because it you know, in terms of like trying to hide, it's hard to be honest with yourself. You know, they kind of look yourself in the mirror each day. And it's like, all right, here's my weaknesses. I'm afraid to touch them. You know,
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I always
No,
encourage.
that's
I mean, I'm sure we all like encourage students. Like, you got to be honest, and that's where like recording yourself comes
Yep.
into play, and just really making sure like you're doing your due diligence and not running away. You know, face your fears. You know.
That's right. Yeah. And recording yourself and auditions are the great equalizers
Hmm.
because you can't hide. They expose you
Exactly.
no
Yeah.
matter what. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So if you really want to be a pro and you want to get better, you've got to record yourself and you got to take auditions,
Hmm.
you know? And then the more you do it, the more you know, you fix those things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. So, what was you mentioned the Santiago Philharmonic in Chile earlier? What was it like performing with that group and living down there? Were you down there full time?
Yeah. Yeah, that was an amazing experience. It was so great. I had lived in Brazil for 2 years prior to that, so I spoke Portuguese, and my wife, we had been married for about a year or two, and she spoke Spanish. Um, she had lived in we both served missions for our church, and so in those experiences we picked up second languages, and so we were pretty comfortable living in South America and speaking the language. And I kind of would go into, I call it Portuñol. So it was like a mixture of Spanish and Portuguese, but they were very patient with me. But that orchestra was so great. The people were wonderful and so welcoming, and it was like this melting pot of an orchestra. It was kind of like a third of the orchestra were Chileans or Argentinian, like South Americans, and then another third were like Europeans, Russians, Germans, people from Spain, and then there were some Americans in there too. And so there was a lot of diversity in the orchestra, and so everybody was kind of like not out of place. I don't know what the right way to say it. There were a lot of people that were like, not from Santiago, I guess is
Yeah.
the way to say it. And so everybody just kind of like, it was like a really good team. It was very friendly. And it's also kind of a European style, um, orchestra, meaning that in the same theater, we had opera, ballet, and the orchestra. And so the orchestra played for ballet and the opera in addition to doing our own concerts. And it was kind of a rotation. Excuse me. And because of that, we were on this constant rotation and you just do the best music. Like I said earlier, the first thing I did was Mahler 2. Then we did Rite of Spring with the ballet, with the original choreography. And Rite of Spring is great, but when you do it, 11 times in the pit, it's a little bit different than on the stage in like one
Yeah.
concert, right?
One and
then
done,
then we did Verdi's Un ballo in Maschera, which is a great opera. And then we did this Italian concert, all the Respighi tone poems with this Italian conductor. And then it was Bluebeard's Castle by Bartok. So we're just like going through this repertoire in the original context, and it was just so great. I mean, I learned so much. And the principal trumpet at the time he's still there. His name's Eugene King. He's from Louisville, but he's been down there forever. He's kind of like the Bud Herseth of Chile. Like he's been there for 40 plus years now, I think.
Wow.
And so when I was there, I was kind of like an associate principal, and played a lot of principal. I mean, yeah. So there were anyway, it was just a really great experience. So I loved living down there. Santiago is a great city. It's a more modern South American city, and yeah, it was great. And then Chile is such a unique country because it's so long, but very narrow. So Santiago is kind of at the base of the Andes, but then in an hour you could be at the ocean, and then the north of Chile is all desert. That James Bond movie where he's in the desert was all filmed that kind of like there in that area. And then the south of Chile is Patagonia, and it's just gorgeous down there. So it's an amazing, country, and so we loved it. But we were only there for just that 1 year. Fortunately, I was able to get tenure there, but my wife was pregnant, and we decided we wanted to come back and just kind of be in the States. We didn't want to live out of the country forever.
Right.
And doing that, I had the best time. It was like the best job, but it helped me realize I really wanted to teach. So we came back, and then I did my doctorate and really focused on getting ready for a job like I have now.
Awesome. So it sounds like, aside from playing in that orchestra, you've also performed and played all across the world. Do you have any favorite cities or countries aside from Chile that you've performed in or anything like that?
Yeah, well, Brazil is one of them. I lived there, and I'm fluent in Portuguese, and so I try to go back as much as I can. The people in Brazil have just the biggest hearts, and the trumpet players are just serious monsters down there. They're so good, and I mean monsters in like the best way possible.
Yeah.
But they're it's just that's a wonderful place, a wonderful country, and so many great cities. This last year, kind of before COVID, I was so lucky to be asked to be on the jury of the Charlier competition in Belgium. And I love Europe, but Belgium is this great country. And that was a neat experience because it was all these my trumpet heroes, and then there was like me. I totally was the one that didn't belong. One of these things is not like the other. It was Eric Aubier and Fritz Damro and Manuel Blanco and Dominique Baudard, and then me. Like, what the heck am I doing there with those guys? But they were so kind, and it was that was a great experience. Also, getting to go to China was a really great experience. I've been to China twice, and Beijing is this incredible city. I remember when I was there, I was the guest of Zhang Wei Dai, who's a really important and prominent trumpet performer and teacher in China, and he's done so much for the trumpet there. And he invited me to his school, the National Conservatory, the Central Conservatory in Beijing. And I remember just thinking in my life, I never thought ever I would go to China. You know, I got to go to the Great Wall, and when you're standing there on top of the Great Wall, you just think, oh my gosh, I'm at the Great Wall of China. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was incredible. And you know, I went on this walk one of the mornings and walked down to Tiananmen Square and saw all that. And of course, everybody there was just, you know, pointing it and staring at me because I certainly did not look Chinese. I was taller and way bigger than all of them. I think they thought I was like this abominable snowman. Um, but it was cool. You know, that's a great place. And so going to China was one of those things that artistically was this really great thing and this great experience. But just getting to go there and experience their culture was really meaningful for me. And ultimately, when it got down to it, and we were doing classes and lessons, you know, some of the students, you know, they didn't speak English as well. Actually, they speak English way better than I could speak Spanish or Chinese, excuse me. I could speak 3 words maybe. Um, but it's music, right? And if I found that if you're in China or Belgium or, you know, Sao Paulo, when you get down to playing the trumpet, it's the same thing, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when we're trying to share what we do, whether it's our music or our teaching or helping each other, it comes back to that thing. It's a people business, right? And so even though we might have these political divides with some of these countries or things, when you get to experience those countries through music, you realize that that stuff is all that we're all just people, right? We're brothers and sisters, and so getting to travel is one of the things that's been a great blessing in my life, right? Because I think when you get out there and you see diversity like that and you see the circumstances that other people live, it not only makes you grateful for where we are in the United States, but it helps you see these common things that connect us all, even though we're quote unquote different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
so true. That's one of the things my wife and I, we've moved around, I don't know, 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years. And everybody's like, oh man, you guys like just need to figure out a place. And each place has had its own purpose and leading to the next. But it's like, and you know, we're thinking like this has been great perspective, getting to see things and learn about the Midwest. Like we lived in Kansas City for a year and like, oh, that was totally cool. Never thought in my life that I'd live there. And that's a great city. You
Great
know, then we
city.
lived in Atlanta for, yeah, then we lived in Atlanta for a couple years and it's like, oh, this is so cool. You know, like each has opened up our eyes to different cultures and just the people, how different the people interact with each other. It's really cool. So I can imagine on the international level, it's even more grand because it's a different culture, you know, different foods, different beverages, all that kind of stuff. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. And I consider it just a tremendous blessing because, you know, you never anytime you get to go anywhere, I feel like it's kind of like a gift and you never know, you know, in March everything that I had was canceled. You
Mm-hmm.
know, every trip, everything else. And then when it's all taken away, I just feel so grateful for the opportunities that I've been able to have and hopefully we all get to a situation past COVID where we can travel again and, you know, hopefully there's other opportunities down the road, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah,
I think traveling is one of the best things a person can do, no matter what you do, right? Just because it's something that helps connect us, right? That's been my experience. It helps educate you, and you see how other people live, and helps you appreciate what you have.
And
for sure.
absolutely. So throughout your, you know, all your travels and your career has kind of led you to being the trumpet professor at BYU in Utah. So since you've been there, I think this is what your second or third year.
Third year, yeah.
Third year. So what makes your the trumpet studio at BYU unique? And when you are looking for students to enter your studio, what kind of characteristics are you looking for?
Yeah. Um, you know, I feel again we've talked about all these experiences that we've had and that I've had, and I feel so blessed to have worked at the places that I've worked. When I was in Texas, I never thought I would leave Texas. That was a we just I loved that job and my students and but you know like I had mentioned earlier, I did my undergraduate degree at BYU and the chance to come back and when my teacher here retired, the chance to come back was just this really special opportunity And BYU is unique for a couple reasons. One, um, BYU is in Provo, Utah, which is at the base of the Wasatch Mountains. You're in the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, and it's just beautiful. And so, I love Texas. I mean, I'm a Texas boy, but you don't have mountains in Texas, and it's so hot. And so here we've got 4 seasons. Like I was telling you before we got on that it's supposed to snow here tomorrow, and I love having snow. I like the cold. So part of just being in Utah is outdoors. This morning my son and I went on a hike in the mountains, and you can do that here. So just being outside in nature is a really great thing. Now, BYU itself is a great school. BYU, what you said, what makes it unique? One of the things that makes it really unique is that BYU is a private school. Everywhere else I've taught has been a state school, but BYU is private, and it's owned and operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is my church. And so, similar to other schools like Notre Dame or Baylor, there's a religious affiliation to the university, and so that makes it really unique. Right now, you don't have to be a member of the church to go here. I have students that are not members of the church, and they're doing really, really great. But that is something that makes it unique and different to many other places. Something else that makes it unique, and I think it's a really, really great thing, but it was a hard adjustment for me. When I was at North Texas, there's a really vibrant and big graduate program. And I really felt like my best teaching, what I loved the most was working with my graduate students and doctoral students, trying to help them make those final last steps, to getting a job. And the ones that I had there are just dear friends, and they're all successful, doing great things now. BYU is primarily focused as an undergraduate institution. And so not having graduate students in the same way, I have a graduate TA who's a master's student. Not having doctoral students was hard for me because I just really felt like that was the best fit for me. But as we've been focusing on undergraduate study, you can have these fantastic experiences like graduate students would, but as an undergraduate. So BYU has this program called experiential learning, which is tied to this really big endowment they have that provides students of all programs on campus to get graduate level research or experiences. They get funding to do stuff. So if how it applies to us, if I have any students that want to do some kind of cool project, they can apply for funding and support that project. Also, if they're doing competitions or summer festival, those things are expensive, but we have resources to help all of our students do that. So you can get really amazing experiences here that I haven't found at other places because there's this resource. There are these resources and support to do that, which is pretty cool. That as an undergrad you can do that because there's not a large graduate program. You also can play in the top ensembles in the orchestra and in the top band and play repertoire at the top level that usually is guys like you at Florida State that would be playing it, the doctoral students. So our orchestra does serious rep. Since I've been here, they've done Mahler 9, and they do a Mahler symphony every other year. And our ensembles also do international tours. So they usually go for about 3 or 4 weeks every year. So when you're a student, this year coming up, our band is going to Spain and Portugal. Actually, no, they're not. That was where they were going to go last year, and then COVID hit. They're going to Prague and the Czech Republic, and then Italy. They're going to be there for about 3 weeks, in Switzerland. The next year, I think our orchestra is going to Spain and Portugal, and the jazz band goes to places all over. So they went to Cuba and Dominican Republic 2 years ago.
That's so cool.
Yeah, you can have these really cool experiences here that I don't think most places can have in the same kind of way. And then, like I said, we've got really good chocolate milk. So and ice cream. It's a good thing.
So what type of students do you typically look for? Like what do you value in a student?
So for me, and this might sound a little bit weird, but to me, I believe the trumpet studio itself is really, really important. And so having the right kind of feeling and attitude and tradition in the studio itself is critical to student success. That's something that I believe. And I think that's mirrored by people that I know and respect, like Whiff at Baylor, and Ryan, who you talked to in Colorado, and Chris Moore at Florida State. Like the way they run their studios is the way I run my studio. We try to go for the same kind of things. So the right student for me is the student that's going to fit in best with that, right? So I'm always looking for students that are really really bright, but they're also positive and happy and outgoing, and they can kind of like fit into this thing. The old trumpet stereotype, egomaniac, all about high notes and higher, faster, louder, that doesn't really fit in here. No matter how you play, I will always take someone that kind of has the right character over someone that plays better but might have a questionable character, if that makes sense. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I feel like if a student is humble and teachable, then we can work together to make their trumpet playing better, no matter where they're at. Um, and so we have students that are really really advanced, and others that are kind of at a more um, earlier spot in their development, and that's all good. There's a place for everybody here,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of character and attitude is what I look for more than anything. Of course I want great players, right? But I want great players. I have this saying that we want great trumpet players but better people, and so students
Mm-hmm.
that kind of fit into that, um, you know, or what that's what I've always looked for. And at BYU, that tends to be kind of the students that we get here are those typical kind of students. So, you know, we have a really good studio.
Awesome.
So anyway,
I love that. Um, so, also, you've recently been elected president of the International Trumpet Guild, which Javian, you're a member of,
Of
right?
course, I'm a member of
Yes,
ITG.
which we are all members of. Yep, I actually got my journal in like last week, I think. Started flipping through that. So, what do you hope to accomplish during your tenure as president? And congratulations as well.
thanks. Yeah, I'm as surprised as I think anybody else is, and it's kind of nice to. So I guess I'm technically a president elect. So
Uh,
as of today, it was announced, President elect Biden is now president elect. So we have something in common. We're president elect,
There you go.
just on very different levels. No, so when they invited me to go on the ballot and nominated me, one of the things that I wanted to do, and the only reason I wanted to try to seek that, or you know, the goal I had was to see if I could find a way to help ITG be something that felt like everyone had a place and a home in ITG. I've been a member of ITG since I was like in high school. I remember my teacher telling me about ITG and giving me his old journals, and then I joined and was in it in college and did competitions in ITG and have gone to conferences for years. And I remember at times feeling like there wasn't always a place for everybody. It seemed like if you knew the right people, then you had a better experience in ITG than if you're just a regular person, right? That maybe didn't know as many people. And so one of my goals is to hopefully continue to make ITG that way, where everybody feels like they have a home. And I feel like in the last 5 or 6 years that there's been a lot of progress there. A lot of new faces serving in important positions, from volunteers all the way up to people on the board. And um, I feel like I, I, I never really wanted to complain. I try not to be a complainer. But we all kind of have that tendency a little bit. And I felt like if I was going to have issues at all with some things, then I needed to like do my part, right? So serving on the board and then now as vice president and then as president gives me a chance to kind of put my money where my mouth is, right? And if there were things that I felt like didn't go great, this is a chance to fix them. There are so many things that are fantastic about ITG. I think that there's misunderstandings out there, but it really is a place that for everybody. Um, our current president is Grant Peters, and he's just been a great president with a lot of vision. He's done some really, he's led some really important initiatives. We just started a thing where high school students and under can be ITG members for free. And so we just need them to sign up. So if there's anybody listening to the podcast that has high school students, they can go to the website and join and get all the benefits of a member. They get an electronic, journal, and that's kind of a cool thing that Grant's done. We just had our listen and learn, which sadly our conference this last year in Anaheim was canceled because of COVID. And so one way to try to make up on that was this fall for a week. ITG on our website put up this listen and learn, which every day there were like 10 to 20 videos of of all kinds of ITG members. Some you've heard of and some you haven't, right? The whole swath of ITG, early music, jazz, orchestral, college teachers. I mean, anybody. There were things that were represented there. That's great. We're planning a virtual conference for this next year. So we're trying to do all these things that to make ITG relevant. We have some really great ideas for the future. So some of the things when it's my turn after Grant, um, I want to do something like you guys are doing. I want us to have a ITG podcast, and that's probably going to happen before I even become president. We're in the middle of working on that. We're hopefully once a week. We've got a podcast that shares either more content about stuff that's in the journal. Let's say that Javian's interviewed in the ITG journal. Well, we could also have you do a podcast episode.
Yeah.
There's going to be a legacy part of the podcast where maybe we go back and talk to some of the important award winners, and the early crucial people that founded ITG, people like David Hickman, and also we want to interview other ITG members that are trumpet players that have a unique story to tell. So a young student that has this really great accomplishment, we want to talk to that person, and people that are trumpet players from all over the world. That's also another goal of mine, is to kind of help people that are trumpet players and ITG members from other countries feel like they have a place in ITG. So trying to generate more content in other languages. I want our YouTube channel to get really active, so we know lots of great artists and teachers from other countries. Why can't they do stuff for the ITG on YouTube in their own language?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be something that happens at our next conference. We're going to have, there's these great international artists that come to ITG. We're going to have them do presentations at the conference in their own language. So that, people that are in France or people that are in Argentina or people in China, they can have stuff like that. It's a little complicated to publish a journal in different languages. We're not to that point, but we can try to generate more content. I'm also interested in a mentoring program. I think it would be great. There's so many ways to have it go, but kind of, people that are, that want to play in an orchestra or that want to be a music educator. We can connect you hopefully with people that are doing those things now to help you have more mentors than just your primary teacher. People that are finishing up their DMA, have them connected with people that were helpful like me. I'm not volunteering anybody, but people that, for me, Wifrud and Chris Moore and those guys were really good, important mentors for me. So we want to try to help other people that are coming up, have experiences like that. So these are things that we're kind of working on that I'd like to see happen. We'll see. It's hard to make anything happen in an organization, but I feel like we can try to do new stuff. I think something refreshing for ITG would be to make ITG 21st century ready, right? To bring us into the modern time. So more content on our website, like I said, podcasts, YouTube videos. I think virtual elements of conferences are here to stay.
Yeah.
We are going to go back to in-person conferences when it's safe, but who's to say we can't have somebody do something virtual? I think Zoom is a part of what we're all going to be doing in the future, right? And so we have all these endless possibilities. I think we want to explore those things.
Yeah.
And then the final thing that's important to me is to hopefully get even more diversity into the ITG. The journal, I know that our editor Peter Wood does a really good job, and it's important to him to have the journal be a diverse, to focus on all kinds of trumpet players, right, and topics. And I think that it's my hope that right now we're about to go into a new election cycle, and so I hope that people will feel like they want to either self-nominate or nominate a diverse group of people. I'd love to be like, I'm not doing all these plugs, but I think it's great that we have our first female vice president of the country. It would be great if on the next ballot there were 2 women that were running for ITG president. We've had great, Kathy Leach was a terrific president for ITG, right? I'd love to see, somebody that's not a white guy be the president of ITG, So, not that there's anything wrong with white guys, but there's a lot of great people, and we want to try to find ways for everybody to contribute. Not only is there a space in ITG for every trumpet player, there's a space to serve too, if someone wants to, regardless of who you know. You know what I mean? So my goal is whenever I'm done, that people feel like that's kind of the way ITG is.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
absolutely. Yeah,
I love that.
I can still remember my first ITG conference when I was an undergrad. It was in Harrisburg, and I remember our trumpet ensemble was doing one of the prelude performances, and we were opening up for Chris Martin, who had just won the Chicago Symphony job. So I still remember going like to warm up, and like Chris Martin's in the same room warming up, and I'm like, oh my god, kind of like fanning out. It's the first time that's really happened to me, and I still, I've written for the journal a few times. So like ITG has been a big part of like my development and going to all these conferences and hear all this fantastic trumpet playing and musicians and networking and meeting people and like especially people who you see in like this, you're big fans of. I remember seeing Dave Hickman for the first time and be like, oh my God, it's Dave Hickman. And so, but it kind of is like you meet these people like they're just regular guys and women. They're great people and they're just fantastic musicians. So like that was kind of like those experiences kind of gave me that like shot in the arm to like, all right, I can do this, Yeah. So it's always been a great time for ITG, at least with me. And I hope to have my students to do more, be more active with ITG moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, no
Those
problem.
those are great experiences that we want everybody to have those kinds of experiences at ITG.
Yeah. So we have, I guess, one more question. Do you have any like morning or evening routines when you aren't playing trumpet? And what do you like do outside of music and playing, like things that you enjoy? You mentioned hiking a little earlier. Are there like other activities?
Yeah, so when you talk about morning or evening routines, you're talking not about like flow studies and stamp, right? Non-trumpet stuff, right?
Non-trumpet stuff. Yeah,
this is
yeah.
like non-trumpet stuff. This is whatever.
We all assume that you're doing your Clarks and your Chickowitz and all those things.
I do my Clarks for sure. Yeah, I do. And they kind of change over time. I remember, kind of from graduate school all the way up until the last year or two, I spent so much time just focused on way too many trumpet routines, right? Like just too much trumpet stuff, practicing, teaching, traveling. And I think there were times where I didn't have enough outside stuff. And that's really, really important. So some of the things that you mentioned, we talked about hiking. During the summer, we try to go as a family on a hike every week. You can do it. I mean, we live next to a mountain. The hike we went on this morning. I mean, we're less than a mile from the trailhead. So, trying to do that as much as possible is just really good for your soul. I've been trying to do a lot of just like regular walking. So I've been doing walking every morning, and that's really good. I listen to a lot of podcasts like Coffee and Clark's, and I don't listen to too many trumpet podcasts. I like sports radio. So to me, Dan Patrick, when I was growing up, he was the Sports Center anchor, and he has the Dan Patrick Show. So I listen to that every day, and I like those what do they call them? True crime podcasts, things like Serial, and there's a great podcast called In the Dark. So I listen to a lot of podcasts like that. I this year, because of COVID and everything got canceled, my youngest son, he's been dying for years to play football. And so he kind of got to the age where he could play. And so we signed him up for football, even though like there's all the COVID stuff. We were trying to be really careful, and the football league out here was taking all precautions. And then the coach was a younger guy, and he had joined the military, but was called to basic training sooner than he was expecting. So they had this last minute like hole for a coach. They got a new coach, and then they needed extra help. So they called and asked if I would help being like an assistant coach. Well, I watch a lot of football, but I don't really know much. And I said, if you're okay with a guy who doesn't know anything, I know stuff, but not about coaching, So anyway, I got to coach football this fall, and that was a great thing. It was great for me and my son. And, we just finished the season, and that his team was really, really great. So I don't know, maybe I'm a budding like assistant coach. I was pretty good on the line.
Here we go. You're gonna pivot to the Cowboys.
No, well
or maybe BYU, they'll hire you.
No. We're doing pretty good this year.
Yeah, you guys are doing really well this season.
They don't need me, but it was kind of fun, for my kids. I don't know. Those are kind of some of the things that kind of stand out. I like to read. I just don't get to do it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I kind of make up for reading during, breaks, the summer and Christmas, breaks.
Mm-hmm.
But I like those like you know, suspenseful thriller kind of books, where they're like some kind of spy or whatever. Stuff that I'm not anything
Right.
like, but it's kind of cool. So, and then I watch probably, when I shouldn't admit this on a trumpet podcast, but I watch Netflix a lot when I warm up, when I'm doing my Clarks. It started out with like ESPN, but now I'll watch like, you know, so I've watched like The Office and all kinds of shows
Yes.
when I'm practicing. And The Office is tough because even though I've seen it so many times, I still laugh. And when you're playing and you laugh, it can hurt your lips.
Yep.
But anyway, so I like looking for good stuff, like good movies and things like that. I have a brother-in-law that's a filmmaker, and so he kind of keeps us on our toes because he knows so much about movies, and I know nothing like he does. So I always want to like watch really good stuff so I can say, hey, have you seen this movie? And of course he has and knows all this great stuff about it. So anyway,
Awesome.
yeah, I also like to mow my yard. So I wouldn't say I have like the best yard, but I love to mow it. I feel like that's like, even though the mower's loud, it's like the most peaceful time of the week. That's where I get so much thinking done. And so mowing, I like doing that stuff.
Awesome.
That's cool. Instant gratification.
Right. And then when you're done, it looks great.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So before we wrap up here today, we kind of like to end on a lighter note with this segment called like, what music are you listening to? So this could be, pop, R&B, jazz, rock, anything like that. So Jason, what have you been listening to, jamming out to recently?
Okay. So unless I'm like trying to study, I don't listen to a lot of trumpet players, although I will say Winton in the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra just recorded this great album called The Ever Funky Lowdown. And we actually were very lucky. Last week had Winton as a guest at BYU. It was a virtual thing, and they asked me to interview him. So in preparation for interviewing him for our students, I was listening to all kinds of stuff. And The Ever Funky Lowdown is, not only is it just like incredible music, but it's so timely. I mean, it's a masterpiece. And so that's something that I can't stop listening to. But on the football team, one of the songs that we kind of listened to a little bit was Back in Black by AC/DC. And for some reason I had never got into them. So I've been listening to AC/DC a little bit. I'll just be really honest, because some of this might be kind of corny, but I think an American treasure is Dolly Parton. And she has a new Christmas CD that came out. So my daughter loves Christmas music, and so we've kind of been checking out Dolly Parton's new Christmas CD.
Nice.
And then if I had one like secret indulgence on the trumpet, it would be mariachi music. I just like have this dream that one day I could be like a third trumpet guy in a mariachi band, and I can't play stuff. Those guys are so great. Those the men and women that play that are awesome. So I listen to mariachi quite a bit.
Nice.
I mean, the trumpet playing is just really awesome, and that's not typical, but I love it. I have a former student in Texas who just wrote a mariachi book and a method book, like the first trumpet method book for mariachi, and so I kind of am into mariachi through him a little bit. And then I've also, if I would be a trumpet nerd a little bit, I'm getting really into historical stuff. So like natural trumpet, I'm just starting I just got a natural trumpet and I'm starting to learn how to play. And so I do a lot of listening to the really great, Baroque trumpet players out there. There's some great stuff. So anyway, that's a lot of different things. Dolly Parton, AC/DC to like, Bach, but.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Tyler, what are you listening to?
Yeah, it's kind of on the same realm, different things. Actually, this morning before my run, I was listening to Jacob Collier to kind of get me going. Yeah, like his newest album that came out. And then Bethel music. I'll listen to Bethel sometimes. And then in terms of like trumpet playing, Phil Smith, just like listening to him. Like I've been like watching more interviews of him talk, and he's just so transparent and like such a peaceful guy. And then when you go in here and play, it just like, I don't know, it just all comes together. And so his playing is just wonderful. Maybe it's from, growing up in Florida, and they had we had to play out of his etude book for Allstate, and so like every summer, every summer you just like listen to Phil Smith play all the time. And you're just like, what in the world is going on? So that's kind of on this end. What about you, Javian?
So I mean, just like you guys, a lot of different things. I started re-listening to Amy Winehouse Back to Black album. It just like popped up on my feed, and I've listened to the album many times before, but I just re-listened to it for the first time in a while, and it's just like her voice and what she does musically, like for someone who's not quote unquote a trained musician, like the way she sings and the musicality that she has is just like amazing. It's like that's the part of music you can't teach. It's hard to teach somebody how to have like that kind of musicality when they're singing or when they're playing. And she has it, and it's like so ingrained in her. So just listening to that album again, it's been great. And I was listening to some of course, Haken Hardenberger. He just released a new Charlie A2, so I'm listening to that, and it's just like, man, it's like jaw dropping, because it's like, man, that guy, that's the sound, and the effort he plays with is just like no effort at all. And it's just a beautiful sound, and his musicality is just crystal clear, So that's kind of what I've been listening to this week, or at least the past week and a half or so. So it's been good times.
Nice.
Good times. But before we wrap up, I want to thank Dr. Jason Bergman again for allowing us to interview him. And it's been a great time. We really, really appreciate your time and all the work you're doing, not just for your own students, but for ITG and your contribution to the music world and the trumpet world as a whole. And I still remember, meeting you for the first time when you were teaching at Southern Miss, and it's like, yeah, this is like a really great guy. And Dr. Moore, who's, my former teacher, spoke very highly of you at the time. It's like, this guy's like, he's like this next coming thing. And it's definitely like came true, and you're doing a lot of wonderful things in your career. So thank you again. We truly, truly appreciate you coming on with us today.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys. It was an honor for me, and I'm a big fan of you guys. I've known you for several years, and it's just awesome to see your success, and it makes me happy when the good guys get good stuff happening for them. So it's a good thing.
All right. Well,
thanks for inviting me. It was an honor, and keep going. This is a great thing you're contributing, and I can't wait to listen to your other episodes.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Where can people, if they want to like follow you or kind of keep up with what you're doing, do you have any like social media platforms or websites or anything?
Yeah, jasonbergman.com is a website that somewhat is updated, but it's got recordings and videos and stuff that are there. I had been pretty active on social media, and I've kind of I shut it down recently. I'm taking kind of like a mental health break from social media, but I'll probably get back on that next year. And so there's some stuff on there, but yeah, just you can always find me somewhere, online. And eventually I'll be back on Facebook and Instagram, but probably the website, people could get my information there. So
awesome. And Tyler, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook. For Facebook, just type my name in, Tyler Duncan, and then Instagram is Tyler Duncan 91.
Awesome.
So no website, none of that yet. But what about you, Javian?
You can find me on Facebook, Javian Brabham. Instagram is nerdyprof, POF. And I have some stuff on YouTube, a YouTube channel there, Javian Brabham. You just type that in, and you'll find some of my projects that I've done over the years. So yeah, that's where you can find us. And if you all want to continue to follow us, this podcast, Coffee and Clark's, on Instagram, Facebook, and on Apple Podcasts. Please rate and subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars if you really like us. And we hope to continue putting out more content in the following weeks and months. So thank you all for listening, and we really, really appreciate it. Thank you. We'll see you next time.